I'm going to walk you through the process that I use to prepare 1040 tax returns. Having a clear, repeatable process isn't just about efficiency, it's about ensuring accuracy, consistency, and peace of mind for both you and your clients. I use this exact same process every single time I prepare a tax return, and it helps me stay organized and avoid overlooking important details. If you're just starting out or scaling your firm, consider writing down your process or creating a checklist. This can be incredibly helpful, especially as you bring on team members or refine your workflow over time. In this video, you'll see me using Taxdome and UltraTax as part of my workflow, but this process is not tied to any specific CRM or tax software. Whether you use these platforms or different platforms, the steps that I'll show you will work with your tools. Look, I don't claim that my way is the only way or even that it's the best way, but this process has worked for me, and by sharing it, I hope that it sparks ideas, helps you refine your own workflow, and ultimately improves your tax firm. All right, so I've got UltraTax pulled up right here where I'm sharing the screen, and I have another monitor where I have my Taxdome pipeline pulled up. Now this is my full individual tax prep pipeline from beginning to end. This is after onboarding, but this is beginning to end, all the different stages that a tax return might fall into. We're going to cover today the tax prep. So it's in ready to begin return, and we are going to prepare this tax return. I'm going to prepare it as if this is a new client, so we have to enter in all of their information. What I would do is I would come into the pipeline, I would see who's in the ready to begin process, and I would open up that job card. Now these are Taxdome specific, but the process itself is going to be something that you can use no matter what. In the job card, what I normally do is I make sure that they have paid their invoice because I do collect fees 100% up front. I make sure that they have signed their engagement letter, and then I start opening up a few items. The first thing that I'll open up is their tax organizer. I will right click and open that in a new tab in my browser. I will then open up their chat messages, also in a new tab, and then I will open up the client account. Once the account is opened up, I'm going to go to the documents section and I'm going to open up the current year documents. Now you will notice that these documents actually say 2023 on them, and we're treating them as if they're 2024. So don't let that mess you up. The documents like the W-2, when I open it, is going to say that it is a 2023 W-2. All the documents are going to be for 2023, but I'm doing this in the 2024 program. So just pretend that's not an issue. These are 2024 tax documents. We're preparing a 2024 tax return. So I come in, I see all of the documents they've uploaded. Now, one note here, these are labeled 1, 2.1, 2.3. The reason why we do that is so that they show up in the exact same order for every single client. So this is a key piece of organizing and labeling tax documents. I have the clients upload their documents. I don't care what they name them. We go in, we rename them. So we might put W-2 Johnny on that tax document, whereas they might have just had scan number 1. We also put a number dash in front of whatever that document is. So W-2s get 1. 1099 interest statements get 2.1. Brokerage statements get 2.3. K-1s get 4.1. I have this listed out so that the person organizing the documents can label it the exact same for every client in every situation. That really helps me know what order the documents are going to be in as I start to prepare a return. Then what I will do is I will open up every single document in a new tab. Now, if they have a lot of documents, you can see this particular one, it's not a whole lot of documents. But if they have a ton of documents, I may have to do this in multiple stages because I don't like my tabs across the top to get so tiny that I can't click on them. But in this case, we don't have to worry about that. So I will right click and I will open up every single one of their tax documents. So now what I have opened up is all of their tax documents, the chat message feature, and their tax organizer. Now, you won't be able to see this because I can't share both my screens, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the very first tax document. That's a W-2, and I'm going to enter that into my program. Now, I did mention, so let me back up one second, that we're going to treat this like it's a new client, that we have never prepared their return before. If this was a returning client, I would start here. I'd enter in the W-2, I'd move on to the next document and enter that in, move to the next and enter that in. I would leave the tabs open, entering in all of the documents. Then what I would do is I would review their organizer and prior year return. Then I would also review the chat messages. We're going to treat this like a new client though. So if they are not already in the system, we can't just start entering in the W-2 first. We need to enter in their personal information. So in the organizer, they're going to have given me their name, email address, social security number, and address. Now, this particular organizer is filled out as if they're a returning client. So you can see it doesn't list their address information or their social security number because we don't need to collect that every year. So if they're a returning client, it doesn't ask for that. If they're a new client, it will ask for that. That's a great thing. Using an adaptable organizer is awesome in my opinion. The client only sees what they need to see. You don't have to give them a bunch of extra information, extra questions. Really helps them not get overwhelmed with the organizer. So I've got this opened. I'm looking through the organizer and I'm getting the information for the tax return from the organizer. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the client properties. I'm going to make sure that I'm the preparer, I'm the reviewer, and I'm the staff person typing this in. If someone else were typing this in, they would put that they were the staff person typing it in. They would click OK. Then what they're going to do is they're going to go to the letter and they're going to type in the, let's shrink this down a little bit. They're going to type in the invoice amount. So let's just say we billed this person $500. They're going to type that in. This is particular to me. Again, making sure that the person is listed as the staff person doing the data entry, making sure that the invoice is here. That's specific to me, but I do this in the same order every time. If I don't check this invoice amount first, and I use this to pull information from UltraTax later in the year, but if I don't do that right now, and I did it sometimes at the beginning, sometimes at the end, then I would forget. So doing this in the exact same order every time means that I never forget a step because I have done it hundreds. I've done it thousands of times in this exact same order. So I'll type in the letter. Then what I'll do, if it's me preparing it, I'll go to the e-file. I'll type in my e-file PIN number. That'll populate right there. And then I'll go to the general tab. So in the general tab, this is a married couple. The person is John. I like to have it on caps. John Doe. And John Doe is a consultant. And his birthday, we'll say, is 1/1/1980. And his address is 111 Main Street. And I populated that because I'm using this fake social security number and it got that information from another fake return that I've created using the same social security number. So normally I would have to type all that in. Then I'm going to have to type in the spouse. Let's see if I can get something that hasn't been used before. So this will be Jane Doe, and Jane Doe is a homemaker, does not work outside the home, and her birthday is April 1, 1980. Address is the same. They do have dependents, so they have two dependents. We're going to type them in. They're joint dependents. First name is Kid 1 Doe. Date of birth is January 1, 2012. Social security number, relationship, this is a son, and they have Kid Doe number 2, born 22 years later, and this is a daughter. Done with that. All right, so now we have their basic information entered in. We can start to go through the tax documents. So what I'll do is I will open up the next tax document and I will enter in this W-2. So we'll enter in the W-2. I don't think the data entry is really that important to you, but we enter in the W-2. It was 80,000. The withholding was 7. The Social Security wages were not 80. They were 60. So this is going to be unique to your program, but typically the Social Security Medicare wages will default to the same as box 1. A lot of times they will be the same. Sometimes they won't be, depending on different situations. This person has a retirement account with code D on it. So we will enter that in. They also have in box 14, 2% shareholder medical insurance. And that amount was $21,787. And this is a K-1 from an S corporation. So we'll put that in. Again, that particular piece might be different in yours. The point here is we're entering the W-2 in. They are part of a retirement plan. The W-2 is now entered. So since the W-2 is entered, I'm going to leave that document open and I'm going to move on to the 1099 interest form. So we're going to go next to my 1099 interest statement and we are simply going to enter this in. This is a joint account based on that. It's from Ally Bank and the interest income was $43.18. Then we're going to move on to our next document. Our next document is a brokerage statement from Schwab. It has dividends and a little bit of 199A dividends, as well as interest and some short-term and long-term capital gains. So we will enter that in now. For UltraTax, I like that it's got this broker tab. So normally under my old program, I'd have to enter in the interest, then I'd have to enter the dividends, and I'd have to enter the capital gains. But UltraTax has this broker tab that lets me add all of that for this one account in one spot. So we can say, this is a Schwab account number. It is also a joint account. I want to include the last 4 digits, and I start to enter in the information. So we have interest income from this of $4, and we could put Schwab here if we want, but I'm going to leave that blank for now. Then we're going to put in our dividends. Again, we could put in the payer there. So the dividends are $438 and $429. There are no capital gains distributions. There are 199A dividends of 9 and nothing else in terms of page 1 of the 1099 div. 1099 interest is 100% included. Then we're going to enter in our capital gains. So in UltraTax, we do that through this statement right here. Now the cool thing about this is, one, the 1099 is going to tell you whether the basis is reported to the IRS or not. So that's going to be box A or D is checked, reported basis to the IRS, basis not reported, not even on a 1099B, or that last one, basis reported, no adjustment. So this is kind of cool right here. One, if it's really long, I can enter it in as a summary. And I can say see attached, and I can attach the summary, and then you have to put a code in here that says, hey, the code is M, which means multiple transactions are reported on one line item. These particular transactions, they're short-term and long-term. The basis is reported to IRS, and there is no adjustment. So I can use box code 4 for these. And I don't have to enter in individual trades. I just enter in various December 15th, the date's not going to show up. So I just put in December 15th for all of these because you do have to put a date in. This is short term, so I'm going to force it. The sales price of the short term was $53.95 and $61.20. Now this is a summary of all short term transactions. Then I'm going to put in a 4 again and various and December 15th and force it to be 2. 2 is long term. So again, the summary total of all long-term transactions are 38,695 and 33,729, 4966. Now this, again, you can use that 4 and you can type in the totals as long as the basis is reported to the IRS and there are no adjustments that need to be made. That's going to throw these into 1A and 8A, where it's not going to produce an 8949. It's just going to give the totals. The IRS has this information. We're reporting it saying you already have it. We agree with it. There's nothing else you need. And we can really shorten our data entry there. So that's a good tip for long-term and short-term capital gains. Our next document is this K-1. This is an S corporation related to that same W-2. We have box 1 business income. We have some distributions, some non-deductible expenses. And then we have some additional information for those boxes, as well as QBI information. This is a specified service trade or business. That's QBI information. And then there normally would be a basis worksheet that we would want to enter in as well. But we just want to jump over and enter in our K-1. So this will be the taxpayer, and the state is Florida. And we would normally fill in profit and loss, enter in all the information, address and everything. I'm going to skip that for now and just type in the boxes from the K-1. The next one is 16C. So again, these are going to be based on your particular program and how you enter these things in. But the point here is we are entering in a K-1 as our next document. All right, I can't find the 16C data entry. It's on here somewhere. This is an 1120S. There it is. It's behind my photo, 16C, non-deductible expenses, 163. And distributions are 16D on an 1120S K-1. Then we have our QBI K-1 information. of $51,000 and wages of $103,492. So that is our K1. Our next document is property taxes. So now we're into our itemized deductions. The property taxes on here are $1,572. Our next document is mortgage interest, and the mortgage interest says $15,500. Our next document here is the 1099 SA. This is for a health savings account for distributions, as well as the 5498 for HSA contributions. So we will enter in both of those. Those, I believe, are under healthcare in UltraTax. 1099 SA. We would enter in the EIN, trust name, all of that would be fine. This is 1201. They did say all of these were for qualified health care. Distribution code is normal. This is an HSA. And all were paid for unreimbursed qualified medical. The 5498 says this is an HSA. The total contributions are $77.50. This is for a family plan, and the number of months are 12. And you can type in the fair market value as well, $66.50. Probably should tell it this is for the taxpayer. Next, we have a 1095A. So I'm just going through my documents in order, and that is also under healthcare, under the premium tax credit. Oh, sorry, it's under the 1095A box. So we'll say this is the taxpayer, the policy issuer's name, marketplace identifier, marketplace assigned policy number. This is for self-employed, K1, and it's for the first one. Now, if all of these numbers are the exact same, you don't have to type them in. You can just type in the annual totals, which is helpful to save some time. Advance payment. All right, all that's from my 1095A, and it is self-employed health insurance. I'm going to check that box. My next document is a IRA, Roth IRA contribution. So that is in my retirement tab here in UltraTax under IRA. This is for the spouse, and it is a Roth contribution of $6,500. That brings me to the end of my documents. So now I've gone through every document they provided me, and I'm going to go through their organizer. Now, the way I have the organizer set up is I'm mostly looking for yes answers. I can skim past no answers. Makes it very easy for me to skim through and look at it. Now, when I'm going through the organizer, I'm looking for anything that I haven't seen already. If they say, yes, I have a Schedule C business, I haven't seen anything for that yet, so maybe I need to ask questions about that. Or if they say, yes, I had a health savings account. Well, I've seen those documents already, so I know that I probably have the right information. I don't need to follow up on that. But if I hadn't seen that yet, I would need to follow up on that. So I'm looking for things that I don't have that I need to follow up on and to make sure that I have everything that I need. So I've got their name, I've got their email, all of this I've already entered in. We did that. Every member had health insurance, yes. Any changes? No. Address didn't change. We have that. Spouse's name, spouse's phone number. Okay. Any changes in dependents? No. Dependent information. We've already got that entered in. They've answered the due diligence questions that no one else can claim them. And they told me that they can provide supporting documentation if needed. There's kid number 2 as well. Foreign earner income? No. No. All right. Yes, you have a W-2. Okay. They gave me a W-2. I have that. Now they might have another W-2. I mean, you can't just say, hey, did you give me all your W-2s? I'm assuming they said they have a W-2. They gave me a W-2. I have what I need. They said yes to 1099 interest and 1099 dividends and sales of stock. I had all of that. I had the interest statement and I had the brokerage account statement. So yes, they say yes to a K1. I had a K1. All right. No, 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 no. Yes, self-employment income. Okay, I haven't seen anything for self-employment income yet. Unless they're referring, sometimes people will say yes to self-employment when they're talking about their S corporation. No, everything else on here is a no. You can pause the video and see the questions that I asked. This is also my checklist to make sure that we didn't miss anything. This is to help identify, did the client have this, and is there something we can do with it for tax purposes? This is really my due diligence to make sure they provide me with everything. There are plenty of sample tax organizers Mine's not exhaustive. I'm looking for the 99% of stuff that everyone has. Now, if they leave something out or if they have something else, they're probably going to bring it to my attention. They may not. You can decide how exhaustive or how short you want your organizer to be. But again, I am using this as my checklist to make sure things don't slip through the cracks. They said yes to health savings account. I've got that. They said yes that they're going to, funds were taken out of the health savings account. All right, we've got that document. Oh, here we go. We've got a sole proprietor business. So we've hit this. It's a side hustle. I asked some questions about the business. They've given me their income and expenses right here in the organizer. I let them either upload a P&L, give me access to QuickBooks, or upload the information. They can choose which one they want to do in the organizer. So this is information we haven't entered in yet. So now we need to go back to the tax return and we need to enter in this Schedule C business. This is side hustle 1, and we're going to say it's the spouses. And no payments were made. This is a question that I ask in the organizer. This is not the first year, so we don't have to worry about that. They do materially participate. It's just a side hustle. From the organizer, their gross receipts are $5,000. Also from the organizer, they have insurance and legal. Insurance of $250, legal of $500. And office expenses of $1,259 and supplies of $859. This is all information that they provided to me that I'm now doing data entry on. I've now entered in everything from the Schedule C business. They didn't have a home office or cars or anything. All right. Did you contribute to a Roth or traditional IRA? Yes. They will upload the 5498. We didn't have the 5498, but they told us here's what they contributed. So I have that information, so I don't have to worry about that. They said they're a homeowner. We have the property taxes. They said yes to charitable contributions. All right, this is where I'm going to make a note. I did not have any charitable contribution receipts. So I'm going to put a note right here that says yes to charity, no amounts provided. So this is where I'm going to just keep notes of anything that I have questions about. Maybe I have other questions and I've kept a note right here. You got to find a place where you're going to keep this if you're not using Taxdome, but I like to put it in the job card in this little description section. So everything else is a no. Yes, they want their refund direct deposited. So then I would go into my general and my banking tab, and I would enter in their bank information, which is right here on the organizer. Then a bunch of no's, a yes to healthcare.gov. Well, we had the 1095A, so we have that. So we don't need to follow up with that. Oh, here we go. In the other notes sections, they said my charitable giving was $11,500. So now I can go to my itemized deductions and I can put in my charitable contributions of $11,500. Now, I always tell clients, you have to have receipts for these, but I am not an auditor. I don't have to audit your tax return. I can take your word for it as long as everything seems reasonable and I don't have a reason to believe that what you're telling me is inaccurate. So I take this and I put it in there. Sometimes they upload receipts, sometimes they don't. Put that in there, and I am now at the end of my organizer. So there's nothing in the organizer. Oh, there is. I was going to say there's nothing in the organizer that I need to follow up on, so I was going to close it out. But during my self-review, now this is not my review process. This is still part of the tax prep process. My process is to self-review all of these numbers. So I'm going to leave this open because I have to double check these Schedule C. Then I'm going to check the chat box to see if they provided anything or if we had a discussion in the past, anything that might pop up to jog my memory of something we've talked about. This particular client doesn't have anything in the chat message that I need to worry about, so I can close that out. Now, I have fully prepared this tax return. What I would do next, I don't have this as a sample document, but what I would do next is I would open up the prior year return. I've entered in all the documents. I've looked through the organizer. I've looked through the chat messages. I would now open up the prior year return. And I would scroll through the prior year return. Prior year return has W-2s. I have W-2s. Prior year return has interest and dividends and stock sales. I have those. Prior year return, no Schedule C. I've got a Schedule C, must be new. Schedule E. Oh, if it has a Schedule E rental property, I haven't seen anything about a Schedule E rental property. Check to see if it was sold on that tax return. If it wasn't, I need to follow up and say, hey, you had a Schedule E rental property. I don't have any information for that. Please provide it. I'm looking for things that they had on the prior year return that I don't have anything for right now. And that's going to help me identify things that they may have that they forgot to give me. So I go through the prior year return. Now, all the current documents, organizer, all their answers, yes or no, I had this, I didn't have this, prior year return. I have a really good idea of their tax situation, if I'm missing anything, if I need to follow up on anything. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go right back through every single one of these documents. I'm going to start in the same order with the W-2, and I'm going to check them off, not in my data input. You could check them off in the data input. I like to check them off on the actual tax return. So again, this is going to look different based on your tax software, but hopefully you have a way to do some checking. So I'm going to check these off. And also UltraTax, when I check these off, if they change after I put a check there, it will notify me of that and say, this number has changed since you checked it off. So I'm looking at the W-2. I'm checking it off here. This is on the W-2 input screen. I make sure the totals are there. Then I check it off on the actual tax return, the 80,000 and the W-2 withholding. Then what I do is I've now dealt with everything on this W-2. I will close it out. Next document is a 1099 interest statement. So I'm going to see, is there Schedule B for interest? There is. I'm going to check off that interest, close that document. The next one is my brokerage statement. So this comes from there. I check that off. The dividends come from there. I check that off. I've now checked off all my interest and all my dividends, which means on the tax return itself, I can check off, this is a subtotal. Great, check it off. I've checked off my interest and my dividends. Actually, what I would normally do is I would go to this broker tab and check off everything from, here's a summary of what's on that brokerage statement. Interest is right, dividends are right, short-term loss is correct, long-term gain is correct, dividends are right, and 199A dividends are right. So that's also going to mean that this is right on my Schedule D. Check all of that off. And again, most of these like this is a calculation, but I'm checking it off in case it changes later. The program will notify me and then I can track down what changed. So that's my Schedule D. There also was QBI dividends, so I checked those off as well. And that's everything for my brokerage statement, which takes me to the K-1. Shows up on Schedule E, page 2. K-1 amount is right. There's only one, so the totals are right. K-1 also has QBI information. So the QBI information from the K-1 is correct. Normally the S Corp K-1 would also have basis information, and you might have a 7203 form to check off. We didn't do that in this particular case. Everything with the K-1 is done. Mark it out. Property taxes, did they itemize? Okay, there is a Schedule A here because they had enough of everything to itemize. If they didn't, and the Schedule A isn't actually on the tax return, then I would check these items off on the input screen. But since the Schedule A is here, I'm going to check them off on the Schedule A. So they did have property taxes. We entered that number in right. They also had the mortgage interest. We entered that number in right. My next document is my health savings account. We've got the contributions entered correctly. We've got the distributions entered correctly. They did enter them all, so I'm going to close out my contributions and distributions. Then we've got the premium tax credit. I'm going to make sure that these amounts were accurate, and they were. Close out that document. Then our next document is our Roth account. So I always forget exactly where this worksheet is, but if I don't remember where the worksheet is, you can see every time I change the tax document, the input screen changes. And every time I change the input screen, the tax documents change. That's one of the things I love about UltraTax is this view where I can see tax return and input side by side. And if I change the input screen, it will take me to that worksheet or that spot on the tax return. So I would put in right there. 6,500 is what was accurately put. This particular client qualifies and is allowed to do that. So this is a great place to double check if they were allowed to do that Roth or not. They were, so I don't need to make a note there. Now I'm closed out all of my tax documents. Every tax document has been closed out. I'm left with the documents page. What I would do then is I would seal these so the client cannot come in and change or delete any of those. That way I make sure that I keep records of what I prepared the return off of. I am now back to the organizer. The only thing that was in the organizer that I didn't have a tax document for was my charitable contributions. So compare those, double check those, make sure total itemized deductions gets marked in case it changes. And then I had that Schedule C business. Go through the organizer. This organizer has check marks, so I can say, check, I did that, check, I did that, check, I did that, yes, I did that. And I checked them off on my tax return. And I close my organizer. So now I have done everything. Documents have been input, documents have been entered, double checked, organizer, prior year return, everything is complete. I then go through the tax return in order and I check off everything. Some of these numbers are calculations, but I've already checked off all of the data entry numbers. So I'm just looking through to make sure there's nothing that looks out of place. So Schedule D, I mean, this is coming from another schedule where we checked everything off. Same here, that's coming from somewhere else. That's the subtotal. This is coming from somewhere else. This is the AGI, it's a subtotal. That's coming from somewhere else. Subtotal. The main reason I'm checking off all these numbers, again, in case they change. My tax program in the diagnostics will tell me if a number has changed since the last time I checked it off. Subtotal, kids, all right, kids, subtotal, calculation, W-2 is checked off. This is from another schedule, all right, they overpaid, great. Then I go to schedules 1, 2, and 3. So this is net profit from there, from the Schedule C, that's from the Schedule E. That's a total. This is from the HSA. This is from self-employment deductible part. Great. Subtotal, self-employment tax. That's from another schedule. That's a subtotal. This is the net premium tax credit, which is from another schedule. Everything's checked off there. I've checked off everything on the Schedule A already that I need to. Schedule B, I've checked off everything. Now I did miss these questions, so I need to do those. Interest over foreign account, no. Foreign grantor trust, no. Those were no's in my organizer, so I did get those answers from the client. Digital asset was also asked in the organizer and they said no, so all that's good. Then I go to Schedule C. Everything there is checked off. Nothing on Schedule C, page 2. Schedule D, I checked off everything on Schedule D. Schedule E, well, there was nothing on that. I checked off everything on page 2. The SE form, this is for the spouse. That's coming from the Schedule C. Double check, make sure that that amount is right. Check these off just in case they change. Again, I want to be notified. Checking the 8879 in case anything changes, it will notify me. 8812, double checking to make sure the child tax credit is done correctly. The 8867, all right, this wasn't done, so I need to go through and I need to answer all these questions. These are your due diligence questions for child tax credit, American Opportunity Credit, and others. So I would fill that out, complete that, make sure it's done. I'm not going to take time to do that now. HSA, that's been done. Premium tax credit is done. This came from Schedule C. That's right. I would check these boxes off again in case anything changes. That's your QBI. Then there's a couple worksheets. Sometimes I check these off depending on what they are. These particular ones I'm not going to. Got an IRA page and the wages page. So now I've gone through everything. The last thing I do is I open up my diagnostics. I look at my critical, I look at my e-file critical, and then I look at my FYI. I clear out any critical diagnostics. Another awesome thing about UltraTax is if you click on the diagnostic, it will take you to the spot to fix it. I love that part of UltraTax. Once I get my critical and my e-file critical acknowledged, then once I get those acknowledged, I would look through the FYI, make sure everything there is right, and I would acknowledge all of these. That is it. I mean, that is my tax prep process. You can see we were going pretty quick, but we did that, in under an hour, I believe it was. And this was a fairly simple return, but that's going through everything. Organizer, prior year return, tax documents, going back through the tax documents and double checking them. That's a self-review. Now I'll go through in a different video my review process. I'll give you a tip. It basically looks exactly like what I just did. I do the same process when I'm reviewing a return that someone else prepared and entered the information in on. If I'm the one signing that return as the preparer, but I had someone else do the data entry and the initial prep, I'm going to do this exact same process. Open everything up, go through it, check it all off. Now, what I have left here is Taxdome specific. I've prepared this return. I did have a question. Actually, this question ended up being answered, so I don't need to send that to them. I can delete it because it was in the organizer. Save and exit that. If I needed to, I would go to communication. I would open up a new chat, and I have a template where if I have tax items needed, it would say, hey, we need some items. I would add the task, need charitable giving. I would put something better there. You said yes. I would type in, you said yes to having charitable gifts, but you didn't provide us with any amounts or receipts. Please provide those to us. And then I would send that to the client. Then I would move this into waiting on responses. And once they respond, check the boxes off, it would automatically move to continue working on. But at this point, I've done everything, don't have any questions. I'm going to move it into ready for review. It's going to apply some automatic things to it. This is all automations done in Taxdome. I'll go through that in a different video as well, my automations and my Taxdome workflow. So I would move that over, and then if this was someone else preparing the return, it would come to me, I would see it in ready to review, and I would go into my review process. So there you have it. That is my tax prep process. Hopefully that is helpful to you to identify areas where you're strong, areas where you need to improve. And if you have areas where I need to improve, feel free to put those in the comments and send those to me. I'm always looking for feedback and ways to be more efficient, ways to catch things that I might be missing, and ways to improve my business, as I hope you are too. This video is part of an on-demand online course that's designed for anyone who is thinking about starting a tax firm, has recently started one, or is just looking to improve their existing practice. Here are a few of the other video topics from this on-demand course. Identifying your target market, advertising and awareness about your firm, my new client onboarding process, my full tax prep process from beginning to end, my tax return review process, content creation, automations, researching tax questions, pricing your services, and a few more.